Another thing too, when you're blowing off your combine in the evening, I do recommend blowing out the hubs, the inside hubs of your variators. Occasionally, when you're learning your speeds, you might notice on CBUS, even on the yellow ones, you might notice that it may say rotor speed not met or not reached. Now, the rotor speed is still within the range that you're going to be separating at, but it might not push it all the way out or all the way in because there might be a little residue built up in there. So as I look down here, I can see the polished portion of the cylinder in the middle of the hub. Sometimes I've seen soybean fuzz get up in there. On this one, on the cleaning variator, just blow those out. Don't forget about that. This one is sitting back here above the chopper drive, and you might get a little more turbulence back here if the wind's blowing just right. You might get a little bit more material up here. So just blow those out when you're blowing the combine off. Just stick your wand up inside here and just blow the residue out of there also on both sides of the pulley. So. Now, if this combine did have the air compressor on it, it would be mounted right here, or the tank would be mounted right here, as well as the retractable reel. And then you'll also have a port on the left side and the right side, and the engine compartment where you can plug in a hose and blow off the other side wherever the retractable hose can't reach. So, on up here to the front. One thing we've done when we went to these new combines, we reduced some of the complexity on them. We took away some of the belts. We got rid of some of the grease zerks, and we standardized the belt tensioners. So all of them now meet tip to tip. So you have the red indicator that meets tip to tip. So we no longer have the fixed idler that was right here for stage 2, like on that combine, stage 2 of the cleaning drive, and stage 1 that was up here, the vertical one. We've got stage 1, stage 2 are right here, and they're just the red tip-to-tip indicators. So 18 mil wrenches, ratchet wrenches is all you need, and you've got the stage 3 is still down here. So if you do get the alarm that says the clean grain elevator belt slip, it could be one of 3 tensioners. So you got number 1, number 2, and number 3. Do all 3 of them because you never know which one it's going to be. You do these 2, you jump up in the cab, you learn all your speeds, you start harvesting. Next thing you know, the clean grain elevator belt slip alarm comes off. Well, it was this one more so than this one, but usually it's a combination of the 3. So don't forget about this one down here, right behind this shield right here. On the 7000 series, so the 7400 and 7500. Make sure that you keep this belt tight on that combine. 23s, it's not 22s, it's not an issue on, but the early ones, that engine, that 10.7 by design warms up on 3 cylinders, and that causes a little bit of a bounce in that belt. You can bump it to mid throttle and that will go away. But during that warm-up phase on that particular engine, as it warms up on 3 cylinders, it's going to chatter. It's going to have it's like it's a cold engine. So just keep that one tight. Maybe once you get it tight, give it a little bit extra turn, just to make sure. And the ones for 22, we don't have to worry about that because there's a damper that's been installed on the engine that's not on those other ones. But just make sure you keep that belt tight. You don't want it jumping off the pulley and damaging itself, and then you have to replace it. This belt right here only engages when I engage the button on the joystick to engage the unloading system. And then these chains down here are your 2 drive chains for your unloading system. And when these are worn out, so they're not O-rings, they're very simple chains, so they don't have any adjustment on them either. So my indicator as to when to replace these chains is right here right there between the bracket and that small bolt. That's a little 10 millimeter bolt head. That gap right there, when it reaches 5 millimeter, which is about the thickness of the wrench, when it hits that, it's time to change those chains. That's the same spec as the chain that runs your fountain auger up in the grain tank. It's mounted on the top of the clean grain elevator. So you have that one and these two, and they're identical to each other. So whenever you get that gap, that looks like it's about 24, 26 millimeter now, when it gets down to 5 millimeter, then it's time to change those chains. There's no half link for them, just replace them. So I'm not a big fan of half links, so you won't hear me talk about using half links, and maybe the last day, if you got one in your toolbox, use it. But when you use a half link, what's a half link make all the rest of the links? All the rest of the links become the weak link. So you don't want to break chains. Broken chains can cause too much downtime. So usually by the time you're putting a half link in a chain, it's time to change the chain, especially on feeder house chains. You never want to use a half link in a feeder house, because then that turns all the rest of them into the weak link, and it's definitely time to change those chains on a feeder house if you're putting half links in.
That's the same design that the Treon has?
No, the Treon has the same as that over there. Same as the Lexion 700.
Which one do we keep tight on the 700s?
This one right here, 7000s. This one right here, right there. So it's an easy. You get that tubular style tensioner, that cage up there. Similar to these right here, you have two of them back here. If you look on the end of it, you'll see the red base at the base of the spring. Just tighten it until that base bottoms out on that strap. Don't tighten it too much where you pull up on that strap and it starts to cave in, so you don't want to bend that strap.
Tensioner has to get within 5 mil.
5 mil, right there, yep, right there. Yep.
Once it hits 5 mil.
Yep, yep. And they're easy to
They're not O-ring.
They are not O-ring chains. They're cheap chains.
So they can be oiled or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And they're easy to change. Just pull up on the idler, roll them off, and put the new one back on there. One other thing on this side, on the threshing side, concave side of the combine, you'll notice we have a larger door into the concave. And this is where that interchangeable grate is located that Cody showed you during his presentation. It's right there. So to remove that, I just open the concave all the way, and I just use the 8 millimeter hex on the end of my combine wrench to loosen them up. And then I just take a pry bar just to lift up and get it on top of that frame and just slide it out over the track. Now, if you have a wheeled machine, it's going to be a little longer. You have to knock the duals off to get that out of there. But like I said before, unless you're going into some specialty crop around here, we don't need to change that for corn, soybeans, and wheat in the Corn Belt. We can keep that full round bar just like it's full round bar on that one and harvest away. No need to change that. That's only, we just provide that flexibility for specialty crops, edible beans. A lot of folks will do it. We've had a couple folks that just have their combine set up to do nothing but seed beans. They'll do that too occasionally, but most of them find out that, hey, I can do a whole lot more with round bar on this combine than I could that one over there. So the amount of reconfiguration we're changing or hearing about on the concaves is very low. If I do need to get a little bit more aggression on that concave, I can reach in here and close this cover plate right here. So you can see the bottom left corner of it. Think of this as a disawning plate on the main concave. I can just push in and rotate and close that off. So when the handle is parallel to the ground, it's closed. When it's vertical, it's open, and you'll also feel gravity take over when you rotate that. So that's a handy feature. For those that were doing wheat with the yellow combines, remember having to put the bolt-in cover plate underneath. That's basically what this replaces that. So you can use it in soybeans. If you got a really tough threshing soybean, you can close that. Just make sure you open it up for corn. And it can also be had hydraulically as well. And if you do have the hydraulic option, CMOS may use that also occasionally in soybeans to close it down, and wheat to close it and open it when needed. You also have a little bit better access down to your transmission down here. It's a little more open. The transmission on the track machines today is different than what it was on that one. So you can get in there and blow it off a whole lot easier than that one over there. It does sit behind the axle. If you have a wheeled machine, the transmission sits in front of the axle. And you can see the dual motors, the dual bent axis motors down there that give these combines a whole lot more power to the ground. They actually accelerate like a tractor forwards and reverse because of that ground drive. It's almost double the size of what's on that combine over there. Settings wise, one thing, rotor grates, rotor cover plates. Get a few questions on when to use my rotor cover plates. You definitely don't use the rotor cover plates when you're harvesting corn. You need to have those stay open all the time. You want as much separation area as you can. But when I'm doing wheat, I will definitely close my rotor cover plates. Everybody in the Corn Belt is getting a combine that has two cover plates per rotor. So your first two rotor grates have a cover underneath them that's controlled from the cab. You can opt up to 4 cover plates if you say you get 40 cleaning, but I don't know too many of those that get put into the Corn Belt. So on here, I'll start with my first grates closed in soybeans, and I'll close both of them in wheat. And then I'll open them up as needed. CMOS will also open and close those cover plates for you, but if you're running manually, you can close them down or open them as needed. The great thing about using those grates, or those cover plates, are one, they enhance separation. They'll hold the crop in the cage a little bit longer to allow the tines to comb through it a little more, to glean the last remaining grains out of the crop mat, especially if it's in green stems. It also drops the chaff out of the cage later, which gives it more time to spread out more evenly over the rotary turns pan so that it will flow more evenly down to the cleaning shoe, make your cleaning a little more efficient. And the third benefit to using the rotor cover plates, especially in very chaff-heavy conditions, like moderately to dry stem soybeans or really dry wheat straw, is the longer you can hold that chaff in the cage and put more of a spin on it, you're going to direct more of it to the chopper and less down into the combine to the cleaning system. So you're actually going to enhance your cleaning performance by closing those up and getting more and sending more of that chaff back to the chopper versus putting it down on the cleaning shoe. It's a whole lot easier to clean grain from larger particles than it is when you don't have as much chaff acting as an insulator around all that grain. So if you've got rotor cover plates, I recommend using them. Start with the first ones closed in beans, close both of them in wheat if you want. Keep them open in corn. You'll notice a difference. Also, and they'll help reduce the amount of, by putting more of that chaff to the back, they'll actually help reduce the amount of returns that you've got as well.